Hey, I'm Pastor Shane. Welcome to a new episode of Family Foundations. Today's episode is part one of a series called The State of Today's Youth Culture. Today, I'm going to be talking with a friend of mine, Tyler Stein, who works with non-Christian teens with Youth for Christ in Saskatoon. And he's going to maybe give us some insights into what he sees going on, specifically in the non-Christian teens that he works with today. You don't want to miss this conversation. Tyler is with Youth for Christ in Saskatoon. He's been with them for about 3 years, and prior to that, he spent 6 or 7 years working with another organization in Saskatoon, specifically ministering to inner city kids. So Tyler has spent a fair amount of years already just dedicating himself to ministry to kids that don't know Jesus today. Tyler, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
First off, what are maybe some of the challenges that the youth that you are working with every day that they're maybe facing every single day?
I'd say one of the big ones I've noticed is a lot of escapism. I think some of this is due to just life situations with abuse and family dynamics there, and some of that. But a lot of it's just escaping life, escaping into, and I think the things that have been normal in the past have been drugs and alcohol, and that's nothing new. But I think a lot of it right now is phones and video games and escaping into digital worlds where the kids just really aren't living in reality around them. It's all digital, and there's so much of that. I talk to students who on a regular basis, I'm like, hey, what did you do this week? Kind of like, did nothing. I was bored, but I just played on my phone or played video games and escaped into that. And I think they know it's empty, and there's a lot of emptiness there, but I think they struggle to get out of that. And I think part of that's due to the fact that their real in-person relationships are so painful often. So I think there's this huge hunger for reality, but yeah, not escaping. So it's hard to know how to provide that, because you try to get students out to youth groups and things, and they just sit at home playing video games and just disappearing in front of a screen. So I'd say that's one of the biggest ones. I'd say there's also, with that comes loneliness and suicidal thoughts. So there's a ton of that. You see it in their online interactions. So I said, a lot of them just their life is online in social media. So you see a lot of them posting really just disturbing stuff and being really, in a way, I'd say I don't understand is being so raw and visceral there online. And I think it's just not, but then you get in person and there's nothing. It's empty. So it's weird. It's weird where they can be more real and be more themselves and more truthful in their online presence. And like I said, a lot of this comes out of abuse at home, or alcoholism, or drugs, and just having home lives that are ravaged by these things. So yeah, definitely escapism though. That's number one, and just escaping reality.
So I would assume then, Tyler, that their online, I don't know if addiction is the right word, but it's just this constant being online. Have you seen this affecting their ability to in person relate? Because what you're trying to do in a lot of ways is that personal engagement with people.
Yeah, for sure. For sure it is. And you see it when you meet in youth groups, right? One kid picks up a phone and all of a sudden just everybody's on their phone, right? And then you're it's hard to interact even. So I've many times had to tell students, put your phones away. Even when they come to our buildings here, they're like, hey, can I have the Wi-Fi password? I'm like, no, you can't. Or you have them out of places, right? And it's just no, because I know I'm going to lose you. I know that your phone will be ringing, buzzing. I think maybe one of the positives to them, maybe not having as much money or home stability, is that they don't have data plans. So the Wi-Fi allows you to control it a lot more. But it's hard. It's hard to have a real interaction. But when you do have it, I think it's really rewarding. I found that recently as you do it, and I have to be consistent with, hey, I think a lot of it, especially in COVID here, has just been going outside and going for walks kind of around the neighborhood. and we talk, we pray. I pray with them. Like yesterday, I was praying for a student on the front steps here at Youth for Christ, and he has a court date for some charges he has coming up, and we just sat down and prayed, and it was good. It was really good. It was powerful. So I mean, God works in these things, but it's hard when the online stuff is just stealing them so much and just is empty, absolutely empty.
Like for me, that I can see that as something that's very worrisome. It's like, all these kids, they don't know how to interact with people just because of always being online. What are maybe some other kind of cultural norms that are worrying you that you see being lived out in today's teens?
There's a lot of stuff with like gender identity and sexuality. And I think the sexuality is a huge one. We have so many students that are facing that stuff head on, and it's hard as a youth group to deal. What does that look like to even have students in your group where they identify as a different gender? What do you put them with the guys? Do you put them with the girls? How do you, like, I mean, outside of a COVID situation, how do you do like an overnighter or something? Like it's so difficult. So that sexuality stuff is hard. And I think as Christians, it's hard to figure out what does a stand with that look like? Like, how do you portray what you believe without being like painted a certain way, right? And it's hard to do that and do that with grace in a loving way. I think we see Jesus in the Bible interacting with people just filled with sin, and I think this is no different, but it's something that is very much at the forefront. I think especially with transgender stuff is one that's really, really come to the forefront. There is so many students struggling with that. I think I've heard from students even where you're not exploring that side of you. It's almost like you're the outsider then when you're not exploring that stuff, which is just crazy. That blows my mind where where you're not going down the roads into like some of this sexual deviancy and deviation from what I think is a created order. That you're the weirdo. You're the one like that's so different from everybody else, right? And so there's definitely a lot of pressure that way. And it's like I said, it's hard as a Christian to deal with that and do that lovingly. It's a really complex issue. Yeah, and I think with regard to our students, one that I've been coming across too, another thing is kids just not being ready for life after high school. Like even figuring out what does it look like to have a job with students. And I think this is specific to working with students who are living in poverty or in inner city kind of circles, but they're not growing up with parents who are working. And there's so much reliance on government and welfare, the welfare system. And so it trickles down, and it's hard we're trying to bring a lot of life skills programs into what we're doing, because it's just, you see students who just aren't ready for life after high school. I mean, sometimes the case is even there's students who growing up in families where they're some of the first ones in their family to graduate high school, right? So it's really difficult to prepare them for that. And I think boredom creeps in after. So you see students graduating and they're just bored, and it just leads down so many destructive paths and right into some of this stuff with the online addiction and other addictions too, right? So I think
the escapism too would really fit
very
into
much
that.
so.
Yeah.
And it comes from purpose, right? I think we all want purpose, and so I think a lot of it is just trying to give them purpose, right? And whether that's a job, whatever that looks like. But I think a job is something good, and without that, it leaves you very purposeful and empty, or purposeless and empty.
Yeah. So like it does sound like in a lot of ways here we're talking about, kids not maybe knowing how to engage relationally with people, escapism, all the online stuff, maybe gender confusion, sexuality issues, not being prepared after high school. In a lot of ways, this actually sounds like a reflection of how parents are actually raising their kids in a lot of ways. And I know there's a whole bunch of different challenges that a lot of different parents have. But like, what do you actually think the kids in your ministry need from their parents the most right now?
It's being present, man. I come back to that time and again. It's just being present. being there to hear what's going on in the lives of their student, of the kids, their kids. Yeah, I think as a youth leader, I think that's something I realized, that just being present in person. It's weird. Like we've had students where I'll see online, they'll be interacting with their parent online and having these deep conversations in like the comment section of a post. It's like, are you guys not talking in person? Like, is this, you have an online relationship, but you don't talk to each other in person? So it's just, honestly, it's just being present. It is. And I think COVID, I think online stuff all just exacerbates that, man. It's so hard to do that, right? And just needing to be around people, but kids specifically need their parents. They need them to be there. Yeah, and just have healthy interaction.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot in a lot of our Family Foundations vlogs through Deuteronomy chapter 6, which really talks about the responsibilities that parents have to actually teach and instruct. And you can't do that if you're not there. You can't really be checked out. I remember a long time ago as a youth pastor, there was a family of boys that were part of my youth ministry, and dad was not around. He was there, but he wasn't there really. And I remember their mom came and sat in my office one day and just said, Pastor Shane, I hope you never, ever let my boys down, because they view you as their dad. I'm just like, whoa, what are you talking about? I'm just this new youth pastor. But like, for me, I was actually present in their life, and they were viewing me as that father figure. I'm like, well, where's their real dad? Like, he's still living at home. He's there. But I think that's one of those things too, where, this idea of escapism and not taking responsibility and ownership of stewarding our kids as parents, like that's a thing that kind of trickles down and rubs off on our kids, and they need us to be there. They need us to teach them about their sexuality. They need us to teach them life skills and how to write a resume so they can get a job, and how to develop good work ethics so they don't have to rely upon welfare systems. So, I mean, like, I think you're just spot on, Tyler. Like, they need to be present, and without actually having mom and dad there as staple figures in their life, it just sounds like in a lot of ways their life goes into disarray. Tyler, thanks for the insights today. It really paints kind of a good picture for us to know kind of what it's like out there, specifically with non-Christian kids, and maybe some things that we as parents of Christian kids need to, be mindful of, because, we need to steward our kids well and teach and raise them in ways that is going to, love Jesus and follow his words. So, thanks for this insight, Tyler. God bless you on your ministry. Wow. Tons of stuff that we need to think through there. Thanks, Tyler, for those insights. I want to encourage you as a parent, and I'm going to as well. We need to think through some of these points that Tyler brought up. Like, are our kids using online media, video games, as a form of escapism? Maybe has our kids' online usage, has it affected their ability to engage in meaningful in-person relationships? This is a hypersexualized world that Tyler mentioned, and it's affecting our kids, especially as it relates to gender and gender identity. Do we know where our kids are at with that? What are the pressures that they're facing regarding their sexuality? And Tyler also mentioned that parents, it seems like they're struggling with being present. Let's really think about that one. Are we being present in the life of our kids? How well do we know them? Are we preparing them well, not only to function for life after high school, but to do so with Christ as the center of their life? These are not easy questions, but they're worthwhile for us to wrestle with. If you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, feel free to send me an email. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.